Hey guys, welcome to the last episode of my podcast. This episode is about the Innocence Project, more specifically, a man named Ralph Armstrong. Okay, first, this is a little bit about the Innocence Project. The Innocence Project is an organization that helps exonerate people who have been wrongly convicted of crimes through DNA testing. The majority of incorrect convictions are a result of a false witness testimony. The Innocence Project has helped 196 innocent people get out of jail, and most with compensation of money for their time spent wrongfully in prison. One of these people is Ralph Armstrong. Ralph Armstrong served 28 years in prison over a wrong conviction from 1981 to 2009. He was charged for first-degree murder and sexual assault of a 19-year-old girl, Charisse Camps. The night of the crime, Ralph and his brother had drank alcohol and had done cocaine with the victim, which was primarily why he was the number one suspect. He also owed the victim's boyfriend $400, which an eyewitness said they saw him give her the cash the night of the crime. During this trial, there was a lot of forensic evidence that was exaggerated, which is the primary cause for his incorrect conviction. The forensic scientist on this case had a lot of physical evidence tied to the case. There was hair, blood chemicals, fingerprints, bodily fluid, the eyewitness, and the money. Hairs on the bathrobe were found, and after analysis, the scientist stated that hairs were similar to Armstrong's but not exact. Later, though, in court, she exaggerated in her statement that 2 of the defendant's hairs were on the robe. Blood chemicals were found on Armstrong's fingers, but no characteristics of the blood could be identified. But while at trial, the forensic scientist embellished, saying, again, this was Charisse Camp's blood. Armstrong did not have fingerprints at Charisse Camp's apartment, but this was not used against him, as he was known to be in the apartment the day before the rape and murder occurred. Another match to Armstrong was the bodily fluid found on the bathroom. This had type A secretions, which matched to Armstrong. An eyewitness also identified Armstrong as the man he saw run out of the apartment the night of the crime scene. Another issue that happened in court was the prosecutors claimed that Armstrong's story of the night was implausible because they thought the route he drove made it impossible to stop at the victim's apartment at 9:30. Instead, they argued that he came to her apartment after midnight, which is when he left his fingerprints and murdered the victim. Another main issue was Armstrong had claimed to pay Camp the $400 that he owed her boyfriend, but the cash was not discovered in the apartment, and the day after the crime, Armstrong deposited $315 into this bank account. They argued this money was from the crime. Armstrong's attorney challenged the prosecution's case in many ways, from the eyewitness testimony to the forensic evidence, but the defense's argument about the money really made their case to the court. Armstrong was convicted of first-degree murder and sexual assault, which led to a sentencing of life plus 16 years in prison. Armstrong made many conviction appeals. His first was in 1991, as new DNA testing results became available, proving that the semen found in Camp's apartment did not belong to Armstrong. But unfortunately, his appeal was denied, saying that the evidence was circumstantial and insignificant, as it was not the only evidence placing Armstrong in the apartment. The Innocence Project became involved in Armstrong's case in 1993, but the case didn't make any breaks until 2001, when more advanced DNA testing concluded that the hairs and semen found in the apartment both belonged to Camp's boyfriend. This helped convince the Wisconsin court to overturn the conviction, giving Armstrong another chance at trial. While the new trial was pending, a woman testified, saying in 1995 she had called the district attorney, John Norsetter, to inform him that it wasn't Ralph Armstrong who committed the crime, but Steve Armstrong, Ralph's brother. And when she provided this information, Norsetter did not take up any leads. She said that Steve gruesomely described the crime to her, and he assumed his brother would be exonerated through GNA. Shortly after conviction, Steve disappeared, and then he died in 2005. Ralph Armstrong was finally cleared August 2009 after the courts decided that his due process rights had been irreparably compromised by the destruction of evidence and the prosecutor's bad faith. In my opinion, the justice system heavily wronged Mr. Armstrong, and more leads should have been followed up on this case. They should have looked further into other suspects because from more information around the case, Ralph was the only one they found. All the physical evidence was a coincidence, which I feel they could have found if they looked deeper. I think it's also crazy that the real perpetrator was his own brother, and his own brother didn't say anything. I could not imagine the guilt he had had. Overall, I feel like it was a really unfortunate situation because even though he did end up free, he still has this whole case tied to his name, and he will never get to live a normal life. Especially when he went to prison so young, he missed out on so many opportunities and just life in general, making it really unfair, and I feel like DNA testing should have been further looked into. Yeah. So that's it for this episode. Peace.